Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Todd Bender. I'm the founder and executive director of City Kids. Alongside today with me is Laura Carmichael, our associate executive director. Welcome, Laura. Welcome to all of you guys who are joining us today, and thank you again for being here. Laura, it's so great that we're able to connect with folks here. I know probably a lot of you are zoomed out right now or video conferenced out. I know we've been doing a lot of this, so it's really special that people can join us today so we can share a brief update. Before I get too far into this, just to recap a little bit more why we're here and a little bit of what you already are aware of, that we really want to be able to report back on where City Kids has been since the pandemic has started, where we are today, and also where we're going. And this format, Laura, is also, we want it to be a Q&A. We want it to be an opportunity for you to ask us questions as well, too. If you're joining us today, it's a statement to us that City Kids means something to you, that it's important to you. So we want to make sure that we're able to grab those questions and do the best we can to respond to you. Now, if you were on a little earlier, you would have been able to see how to do that. It's pretty simple. Now, I say that, but I know sometimes technology can be complicated to depending on what we're using it on. So if you're on a computer, there should be, whether it's a device or a computer, there should be a button that you can press that'll open up another window and allow you to put a question in there and then hit send, and that will get off to us. Now, feel free during any time in the presentation today to send us your questions. We will be taking some time at the very end to address as many as we can before our time together is done today.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, for sure. And that's going to help us to make sure that the content that we have today is most meaningful. It was over 6 months ago that for us, at least here in North America, here in Hamilton, that the pandemic really hit. And I remember we were, Laura, we were with our leadership team, really excited about our season starting. We had started a couple weeks of City Youth, and we were just on the verge and the dawn of starting our City Kids season. We were so excited. And then our phones started going off. Now, we were aware that COVID-19 was a thing and that we were monitoring it, but I don't think any of us knew just how serious it would become. And it was probably around March, middle of March, where, I joke, I think it was the NHL that canceled their events first, and then there seemed to be a trigger event that happened, and that sparked what is now that we've been living in for the last, it disrupted all of our lives, and all of us to some extent or another, and I'm sure you at home too, that you've been facing lots of different challenges at home with your family, in your jobs maybe. And again, we want you to know today that as much as we've been working hard to deliver programs to our kids and families, that we care deeply about our supporters, our volunteers. We've been praying for you guys as well too, and we hope that you all are doing well. But with that being said, we know as much as we've been suffering and the challenges that we've been experiencing have been difficult, the challenges of our families, Laura, and what they've been going through as well is extremely difficult during this time.
It's so true. And Todd, we've all experienced COVID, and we've all experienced it very differently. And one of the things that has just struck me so much in these last few months is that the families that we are so honored and privileged to walk at City Kids, Todd, they are beautifully brave, resilient, courageous families who are truly inspiring, and they face adversity on a daily basis. They may have situations where they don't have enough resources, where they are doing the balancing act of providing for their family and taking care of themselves, of just all of the different things that can compete for their attention. And that was all before a pandemic hit. And so COVID hit, and we had our families who are already used to adversity, and then this pandemic piled adversity onto adversity. And as a result of that, just some of the impacts have been extraordinarily difficult for our families. And so I just want to share a few of the ways that I've seen our families be impacted in this time. We have families that we've heard of stories where the parents have maybe a single income home, and that one single parent lost their job as the pandemic started to roll out. We have situations where families have said to us, I really want to care for my kids well. How do I do that when I can't keep them safe if I have to take them with me to the grocery store because I can't get a babysitter right now because no one can be here with me? Or I am in a small place by myself with lots of different kids and we can't even get outside. How do I parent well? How do I do well? And then of course the kids who are saying, I'm bored. It's springtime, I want to be going outside, I want to be doing things, but there all of a sudden wasn't anything to do and things were just shutting down. for many of our families, some of the living situations that they were finding themselves in just meant that they weren't able to practice the physical distancing measures that we were being encouraged to do. They were sharing common spaces in apartment buildings with laundry rooms and lobbies and elevators and all that sort of thing. And those are just some of the simple things. Then, of course, Todd, we've heard a few stories of families where normal life things have happened in the midst of a pandemic, and it's really created just tremendous suffering for a family. So I just want to share one story about a family who has several children who are part of City Kids. We love this family dearly. They are a part of our community. And in the midst of this pandemic, they suffered a tragic house fire and lost absolutely everything. And so imagine being in a world where you've lost everything and all of your supports are gone, but then not only have you felt that personally, but the world around isn't really equipped to support at this point in time because everyone is keeping a distance and everyone is sort of self-preserving. And so we see our families who, again, they are resilient and beautifully brave, and they have been trying to navigate through this time of, what do I do now? When some of the supports that they've been used to have been taken away, when the loneliness has really set in. And I think probably the greatest thing that I heard from our families was just this lack of community and this sense of, who is with me in this? Am I alone in this? Do I have to figure this out by myself? And so that's really been one of the things that we have been hearing a lot of, that we have been passionate about figuring out how we can understand better and what we could do to respond. And one of the reasons why we are so tremendously grateful for all of our community of support through volunteer and financial support and prayer support, people who are standing with us and saying, we want to be part of this too. We want to help you love our families well. So Todd, that's kind of some of the overview of just what our families have been experiencing. COVID hit all, like I said, we've all experienced difficulty in it. And for our families, it's been adversity piled on top of adversity, on top of adversity.
Yeah, and look, at suffering is hard to, for our loved ones. It's one thing when we experience suffering ourselves, Laura. I know that's difficult for sure. But when our loved ones, our children, our family members are suffering and we can't do anything about it, it feels limiting, and it's probably even more difficult. So we've been entering into those stories with our children and families as much as we can. But Laura, when this began to happen, I got to say that initially we felt a deep sense of disappointment, as I know our volunteers did, our children and families. I was telling a story yesterday. I heard when we had to phone and tell our kids and families that City Kids Start was going to be postponed, the kids started crying because in some cases, the City Kids Saturdays and the work of City Kids, our Big Red buses, our volunteers who visit, and in some cases, that's the one hopeful thing that happens for our families during that week when our families have so many challenges. So it was a really discouraging thing for us, but we had no option. And so where were we? And that's what I want to talk about now, is just where we've been in kind of the journey that's brought us to where we are today. You know, it was back in March when we initially right away responded to when we knew we had to postpone our programs. And I want to tell you that one of the things that City Kids has a history of doing is that we don't sit idly by when things begin to happen. We're very good at pivoting, which is a word we've used a lot recently, is pivoting to try to change and figure out, instead of focusing on what we can't do and the limitations and barriers that bring with that. What can we do? And our team was so proactive, our leadership, our board, to try to figure out in the initial response, how can we pivot and figure out what we can do in the short term? So right away, once we canceled and postponed our programs, we were looking at the short term. So we were able to call families immediately to let them know that we were needing to postpone. Now, everybody was there at that point by the pandemic, so it wasn't surprising to them. Schools had been closed, businesses were closing, all park programs and sports programs were shutting down too as well. But as we began to call families, we made a commitment that we would continue to stay in contact with them weekly. So instead of being able to go into the homes and knock on doors like we would normally do in our home visit program, we made sure that we were making weekly phone calls to all of our families, the ones we had numbers for and the right numbers, as much as we could. We also initially sent out a mailer because we wanted to make sure we over-communicated with our kids and families. And so in that mailer, we were able to include different instructions and directions of how they could get extra support they needed. There's some activities in there for the kids as well too, and really directions about where City Kids was going and what they could expect in the future. The other big thing that we did right away was to launch an online presence. Now, I know a lot of organizations right away went to the virtual piece, and we did as well. And it only took our team about 2 weeks to launch a brand new website called Big Red Bus, and it's bigredbus.ca. I encourage you after today to go to it and see some of the videos that our team has been posting. Now, we knew this wasn't going to be the same thing as getting on a big red bus, coming into our studio theaters and experiencing and being immersed in our regular programming. But what we tried to do with the Big Red Bus website was to provide weekly content that the children with our City Kids kids, our school-age kids, our kinders, which are our preschoolers, and even our city youth too as well, could engage in video content, could see people that they had relationships with that they knew, and to experience a virtual experience of what it would be like to come on a Saturday. Now, it wasn't what we wanted to do, but it's the best that we could in short notice. And so I was really encouraged that initially families were going there, kids were experiencing that content.
Yeah, Todd, I'm wondering even, can I just share a little bit about how many kids we've been able to reach during this time? And so we have been, for sure, missing the kids being in here with us, but we have been able to maintain connection with over 1,200 kids on a weekly basis. That's like Todd was saying, from our kids all the way up to our city youth. That represents almost 700 families. And so through these calls and through the intentional acts, we've been connecting with 700 families. And that's a presence in 18 neighborhoods in Hamilton. And that's something that we are so grateful for. So though we have learned a new way of connecting with our families, and we have been struggling to kind of find our way through and try these new things and innovate and pivot and all that stuff, we have been tremendously grateful to be able to maintain that presence with that many kids. And at the same time, we still really felt this lack of connection in person with our families. And so the calls were good, and the being able to send things in the mail was great, but we felt it. We felt not seeing our kids, and our kids felt not seeing us. And so, Todd, we knew we had to do something better.
Yeah, and being really transparent with you today, I mean, we did respond very quickly, and I was pleased with our organization, how quickly could respond. But we were all left feeling like this just wasn't what it was supposed to be like. And we could feel, because of the close relationships we have with our kids and families, we could feel their pain and suffering as well too. And we had this longing to want to do more. Now, at that time, we were at least pleased that we could sustain the same number of families and kids in neighborhoods, because certainly on the other side of the equation was the fact that some of our fundraising was being impacted. We didn't know what the future held for City Kids in terms of our finances and our ability to be able to sustain that many children, that many roots. And I can tell you right now that supporters have been so faithful in giving to us. Obviously, we've been able to also connect with the government subsidies that have helped, but all of that helped us to sustain the same amount of children and capacity that we had. So that at least was something. But Laura, you're absolutely right. As we watch the pandemic continue to unfold, as we're going now through March, turns into April heading into May, we continue to roll out our weekly videos, our phone calls, and connecting with families. It really became clear that the pandemic wasn't going away anytime soon, and it was going to be figuring out how can we do relationships within a pandemic environment. And so our team got focused and decided that we need to do something more that could actually be into the neighborhoods, that could really engage with the families. Now, we had the same restrictions that everybody else did. When we were at stage 1 and stage 2 in our province, we weren't allowed to do a lot of things. And I was joking a little bit as we were trying to find humor in all this, that it's the first time in the history of City Kids that our programs were outlawed, that it was illegal to bring people together. And so finding creative ways to do that was where we spend our time. But Laura, before I go into all the details, friends, we were able to capture some video over the last few weeks of some of the initiatives that we've launched. And before I give any more detail on that and we talk about where we are today, take a few moments and watch this.
every week with some lovely treats. We're also going to be handing out some activities that they can do. And just overall,
I've been in this area here visiting these children for 11 years every single week. And since COVID, I've had to call all the kids to make sure that they know we still love them and we haven't forgotten them. And today is great because it's the first time we get to bring the bus back into the community and get to see the faces of the kids. They get to see our faces and see our hearts for them. So it's just a great experience today being able to do this.
It's great to see everyone again. See everyone hanging off the balconies, waving hi. It's good to be back in the driver's seat, bringing the big red bus around. It's been a hot one today, but all the smiles and all the thank yous and all the roses and waves, it's been all worth it.
Yeah, I've seen that video, Laura, a few times now, and I still get emotional. I think it's just a sign of just how much struggle we've all been to be able to get out there. And I'm hesitant, Laura, too, to say I'm feeling excited and enthusiastic because it almost feels this tension between what we're not able to do because we're not able to bring kids back in. But what we've been able to do, especially in the last 6 weeks, and the potential of what we have to be able in front of us to be able to do even more, I want to say to you today that there is an excitement that we have some elements now in programming that exist within the neighborhoods that may be potential to really bring meaningful impact to kids and to families. And I'm hoping you saw the looks on our kids' faces and parents and just the joy. So, Lauren, I want to take you through a little bit and break it down what we're doing right now, some of the specifics. We've called this part of what we're doing the City Kids Cares Project. So after our initial response, our team got together and we took actually 6 weeks. We called it Operation Silver Lining, and we got together with our board, with our managers, with our leadership team, and all the staff was engaged in this, and we started creating other alternative program models. And so we want to walk you through what some of those components are that started in July, and we'll continue on now until we're able to get back to our programming, bringing kids on buses and into our studios again. It first began in the first week of July with bus tours. You saw the buses rolling into the neighborhood, and that was our opportunity to let families and kids know that we were back. Now, maybe not back to the regular scheduled programming, but that they were going to be seeing us on a regular basis. So in week one, we rolled all the buses. We called our families up to let them know we were coming, and we took our buses and we drove down the street, and all it was meant to be is for families to come to the porch or the veranda or the balcony and to wave at us, and we were waving at them. We were having conversations. And I can tell you the joy of seeing the big red bus back in the neighborhoods was and all the kids, and I would say the staff as well. That was where we started, but it didn't end there, did it, Laura?
It definitely didn't. That was just the starting point of getting back into the community, and then from there we started doing our home visits again. And so hopefully you know that home visits has been a paramount part of City Kids since we began, and that is when we, on a weekly basis, we go and visit every child at their home. And the person who's visiting is the person who has the relationship with them, and they've been developing this over time. So now what we're doing is what we're saying is a bit more of an enhanced home visit, a connection with our families, where we are providing some food to the family, we have activity sheets. We are also able to provide birthday gifts, Todd, because that was, I think, the main thing that I heard when this happened was, so we've been providing birthday gifts to our kids, and just really a chance to connect and build relationships with our families at their homes again, and that has been a joy.
Yeah, and hopefully you saw some of that in the video, which again will be made available afterwards so you can watch it again. But kids receiving their birthday gifts. Every birthday gift, Laura, is individualized, just like it was before, but and our Christmas gifts as well, where it's picked just for them. They get a wish list they get to fill out, right? And then
it's all wrapped up special for them.
It's so amazing, and it's amazing to see the children and their families when they receive the gifts. One of the things I'm excited about now that we began slowly phasing in was what we're calling pop-up programming. And it's an interesting concept because it takes us back to the roots of City Kids years ago when we first began. I've spent some time in Brooklyn, New York, and the Bronx, and doing all kinds of different programming in different areas. And so we decided to go back to a bit of our grassroots. And so what pop-up programming is, and you saw a little bit in the video, we go out as a staff, and when opportunity is available to us, after the home visit is done and the kids have had the conversation with their team captain, the person who's visiting, we have our fun squad who, if the kids have extra time, maybe 5-10 minutes or so, they will put on a short little program just for those kids. So the kids could sit on the balcony, they might be sitting on the front steps or on the grass, and our programming staff will take them through the mini lessons, a mini opportunity to entertain the kids, to have a small little program. You know, so far we've already had 140 pop-up programs that we've done since we've started this. And again, it's not the same as bringing kids into a large group gathering, but I can tell you, having a program that's specifically made just for the audience of 2 is pretty special for those kids. And so I'm really excited about how we can continue to enhance this, and our teams are going out every single day of the week, bringing pop-up programming and our connections and our enhanced home visits to our kids with their birthdays. But Laura, that's not all we're doing, is it?
It is still not all. Todd, there's one more piece of this that we're doing that I'm really excited about, and that is our City Kids Cares Kits.
Yeah.
And so these Cares Kits, what they are is we've identified 175 families within our City Kids community who have experienced just an increased level of adversity. And what we're doing is we are providing them with a care kit that is full of some practical items, such as some food items. We've got some activities for the kids. We've got some things that are addressing the emotional, the mental health well-being, and then we're also giving them some grocery gift cards. So these are designed to bring a little bit of hope and also to alleviate some of the suffering and to provide really tangible support to our families. So those will be starting really soon.
Yeah, we're rolling those out. We've been prepping that for a bit now, and this is a new thing for City Kids. We've not entered into this type of program before, but we really felt in a pandemic environment when we are seeing every day the needs of our families, that while we're not going to be able to be prepared for an extended support like some of our multi-service agencies in our city are, we can at least come in through a relationship and bridge that gap until we can help give them the support and connect them to the agencies and to the ongoing support that they need. So I'm really excited about those City Kids Care Kits, and we're looking forward to being able to distribute a lot of those. Up to 175 of those we're planning before the end of the year. Now, Laura, one of the challenges of all the programming, and there's been a lot of challenges that we've been trying to overcome, but it has been tough to program for our city youth. And we had mentioned before that we had launched a couple weeks of City Youth, and it was youth were coming out, and it was exciting, and things were heading in a really great direction, and then suddenly it had to stop. And initially we had Instagram videos, and our team was engaging with our youth on Instagram, but it took us some time to be able to figure out what was going to be the best way to help bring our youth, the city youth, the graduates of City Kids who've been with us for so long. How can we bring meaningful program to them? And I'm really excited about some of the things that we're doing now. Laura, can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, ironically, our season at City Youth this season was momentum and friction, and so we got our 2 great weeks, and then friction hit us. But we have been, like Todd said, we're taking the time to understand what was going to be meaningful and relevant for our youth. So now what we have is our youth are meeting in small groups online with their mentors, and they are able to connect on a weekly basis still on Wednesday nights, where they have the chance to be known, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. And right now they're actually in kind of a City Youth competition where every week there's different challenges for them, opportunities for them to support one another, and then also to be in the community. So that's something that has started. We're about a month into that, and we are going to be just continuing to grow that. Todd, we've also started with our youth gathering together in small groups and having pizza parties. Pizza is a very important part of City Youth, so being able to gather them together for that has been wonderful. So when you put it all together, we've actually, I'm just really, like you said, Todd, maybe not excited, but I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the opportunity that I had to connect after where we've been able to be over the last 6 months. But Todd, I'd love to hear, where are we going?
Yeah, and you know, that I like that word, thankful, because it does feel weird to be excited about something that's not what you had wanted to do originally, and we're just trying to figure it out day in and day out. And you're right, Laura, now we talked about where we've been, we've described and shared a little bit about where we are today, 6 weeks into the City Kids CARES project, and we've got several weeks to go as we complete our summer. But part of the question now is also where we're going. You know, the first thing I think it's important to share again is to remind all of us, and especially us here, but also those that are watching today, our volunteers, our supporters, that we exist to serve as these families. And we know that in the course of 25 years of City Kids ministering into the neighborhoods and fulfilling our mission, the programs of City Kids have looked differently. They've changed over time. And what the most important thing is that we can do is learn to adapt and figure out how can we continue to inspire our kids to dream big, to help come alongside our kids and our families to increase resiliency. And hopefully the goal is, as we travel with them, no matter what our programs look like, the ultimate outcome is that every child that we come into contact with and we can journey with, that they can grow up and achieve their dreams and become all that God has created them to be. That's our ultimate goal. So we sometimes have to step back because we know that we get so connected to certain specific programs that we love, but we have to remind ourselves that the most important thing that we're called to do for our families and our kids is fulfill the mission. And that is inspiring our kids to dream big. It's bringing faith, hope, and love every opportunity that we have into their lives to try to meet needs, to try to inspire, to keep resiliency high with the idea that all of the kids that we love so deeply can go on to achieve their dreams. And so as we look to the future now, there's a couple things that we know. First off, we know the pandemic's not going away anytime soon. I'm sure each of you have been following the news as much as we have, and we know that there's a lot of unknown, and there exists so much unknown, it's really difficult to plan ahead. What we like about what's happening now at City Kids is that we have the opportunity with the programs that we've created and that we're building into, that whether the pandemic is here or not, we're going to be able to continue to scale and grow and increase the capacity of the programs we shared with you today. So we are looking forward to continuing to do that well into the fall and throughout this year. Now, that being said, it's really important for us to share that we really want to put kids back on buses. We really want to pick them up from their neighborhoods. We really want to be able to bring them back into our studios and our location to immerse them in this great inspirational environment. But we just know that there's a lot of areas where we're able to get there. Laura, one of the things that we're going to be watching and that we always tend to take cues from is the school board and the schools. Schools bus kids in. They also have to navigate the large group gatherings, and we know in September right now the school board and the schools and teachers are working really hard to figure these things out. We know even the charter companies, the busing, they're trying to figure these pieces out too. So we're going to be watching how that happens and taking lessons from that. But I do want to encourage you to let you know that the large group gatherings, the Saturday experiences that we've had that has been so much part of the history of City Kids, we're committed to that, and we have every intention of continuing to have that be part of our program offerings for our children and for our families. But we do believe for the time being, at least to the end of this year, that that's going to be difficult to do. But the good news is, Laura, that as we've talked about often, is that we know how to do our Saturdays. And so as windows begin to open up, as the province begins to open up even more, and we can increase the number and the size of our gatherings, we're going to be ready, and we're going to be ready to scale to get back to that, because we know everybody's going to be eager to see that happen. So again, I want to commit to you and let you know that no matter what it looks like, we are working hard to make sure that we can continue to find creative ways to bring faith, hope, and love to the children and families that we so care deeply about, and you do as well too. I know that, and that's why you're here listening to us today. And we're also committed to working as hard as we can to adapt to change and to make sure that we continue to have relevant programming that are meeting the needs of our kids and our families. Now, Laura, just before we wrap up and get to some of our question and answer period here, so again, I want to remind you, if you have some questions or comments even, please click on that Q&A little box and fill out that question or comment too. We'd love to hear your questions today. I'd love to take some time to respond, as we're got a few more minutes left yet before we finish up. But I think, Laura, when I think about this, there's still lots of challenges that we're going through, but there is a sense of gratitude that we have. Not just gratitude that we have found a way to respond and to bring joy and hope back to our kids' lives, but I think gratitude, the fact that we have so many great volunteers, so many great supporters that have stood with us through all of this. I think that was one of my concerns right away, with all of us struggling so much on trying to adapt to how the pandemic has disrupted our lives. it would have made sense to us that supporters and volunteers would have had other priorities. But nobody forgot about City Kids. Support continued to come in. Volunteers continued to inquire about how they could help. And I got to tell you, that has allowed us to have hope ourselves to know that what we do matters. We're making a difference in the lives of our kids and families, and we'll continue to do so as long as we have support from folks like you. Laura, one of the things that I want to be able to share is just how people maybe can get involved. Just before we go to the question and answer, and I promise I'll throw it back over to you in just a few minutes so we can tackle that. People have been asking how they can support, how they can help. One of the things I just want to encourage you, if you want to be part of the work that we're doing, the City Kids Care Project, if you want to give financially, it's simple as going online to our website. It's the easiest and best way to do it right now. We're trying to keep all of our current information, keeping it as current as possible, so as things change on the ground, we're trying to communicate with our community what those changes are and how you can support that. We do need to raise more money to continue the City Kids Cares Project, so I encourage you to do that. But we're also now opening and recruiting volunteers actively to help us. You saw in the video lots of opportunity for volunteers now to engage. Of course, we're managing, we have some pretty strict COVID policies or the pandemic policies that we're doing with all of our equipment. So there's lots of hoops to jump through there. But if you are eager or excited or would like to get involved again on the front lines, we really encourage you to reach out to us and connect with us, because we certainly are looking for more volunteers as we move forward. Laura, one other thing I didn't mention is that Christmas will be coming in December, by the way, and December's coming soon as well, too. So we're going to be into the fall, and soon it'll be Christmas. And I know I'm talking about Christmas already, but I do want you to know that in the future of the City Kids Cares Project, we are going to be doing our Gift to Christmas campaign, and we have every intention of making sure that every child of City Kids is going to receive a Christmas gift. So stay tuned for more about that as well. Well, Laura, we're almost to the end of our time together today, and I do want to take some time for some questions. Do we have any questions that have come in to us today that we can look at?
Yeah, we do. We've had some great questions, so thank you. Please keep sending them in. Todd, I just wanted to follow up on your comment about volunteers. We definitely do have a need for volunteers, and this is actually one of the questions that some of you have been asking. Some of the specifics that we're looking for volunteers right now to support would be to join one of our bus teams. So you saw in the videos the teams that are going out into the community. So if you are a volunteer on Saturday, you would know what that's like. And if you've never been on a bus on a Saturday but want to join in on the fun, that would be one of the ways. The second way is in the office, as we are seeking to select and wrap all of these birthday gifts for our kids, as well as the food items that are going. We definitely need volunteers to help us do that. So the best way to get in touch with us is to email volunteer@citykids.ca, and then our volunteer team will be able to get in touch with you. So Todd, one of the questions that has come in, which I think is a great one, is just how many families have access to normal internet?
Yeah, what a great question. Of course, this was our great concern too, as suddenly we couldn't do any in-person things and we had to do a lot through the internet. 10 years ago when we tried to launch some digital media opportunities with families, because certainly it was beginning to become more evident that YouTube videos and things like that would become quite popular with the kids. Mm-hmm. We did a survey 10 years ago, Laura, and it was only a small percentages of families that were part of the City Kids community that even had access in their homes to the internet. I think it was under 20%. And so we weren't able to launch things back then, and that helped to dictate timing to us. Before we launched our Big Red Bus website, we do a lot of assessment and feedback at City Kids, and we involve as many stakeholder groups as we can to make sure that the programs and the things that we want to do actually are relevant and make sense and are meeting needs. And it was nearly 100% of families responded saying that they have access to the internet. In fact, they have to have access to the internet in this day and age. Mm-hmm. For those of you who have kids, you know that in the school system, most of the communication happens through email now. It happens through a school hub. So parents have had to learn to be able to adapt to that. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of our families will use smartphones or tablets. Very few of them will have actually desktop computers. Some of them will have laptops. But they've had to learn, all of us have had to learn to engage in the digital world. So now we haven't seen as much engagement with our Big Red Bus as we would have liked at this point, but we also feel that there's probably a lot of fatigue, screen fatigue happening right now as well, but we still believe it's an important strategy as we move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Todd, the second question that has come in is just a little bit of curiosity about some of our care packages and about the approximate value of each one of the care packages that we are able to send out.
Yeah, that's a great question because this is new, relatively new for us. We had to do a lot of research and talk to a lot of our partners who are in agencies and organizations that do this ongoing. But Laura, I think you're probably best to answer this question, so I'm going to throw it back over to you.
So with all of the things that we're hoping to put into our care kits, each one is approximately $200 in value. And that is the combination of the grocery gift cards as well as the activities, the food items, and some of the other resources that are in there. So at this point, we feel like that's a good starting point for us. And then, of course, we're going to listen to feedback from our families and see if there are other items that would be more helpful or other ways that we could improve this experience for them to meet the need.
Yeah, and the City Kids Care Kit philosophy for us was really almost around a well-being kit, right? I know what it was like when my family struggled and we got a knock on the door and somebody brought us a meal for that evening, and just the idea that we didn't have to cook, with all the challenges that were going on at that time, we didn't have to cook a meal that night. It really just enhanced our well-being in that moment. And so that was kind of the I would say, the motivation behind saying, how can we come in when a family is in crisis, and just for even that moment, somebody who already has a relationship can show up and say, we're thinking about you, we care for you, and in a practical way, we picked up some things for you and we hope this will help. And so that's what this is meant to be. And we're certainly going to learn as this goes through, Laura, a lot about what's helpful and what's not. Our families and parents, and because they're really great at giving us feedback. And so we just want to make sure that both the items and what we put in them are actually helpful and meaningful. So we'll be making sure that we're listening to our families and changing that as the time goes on.
Todd, there are several questions that have come in just about the volunteer experience, whether it's how do new volunteers get oriented right now, up to how is the schedule working and how are we actually accomplishing this. So I'm just going to speak to that for a minute. So at this point in time, we are offering online volunteer orientations on a monthly basis. And so if you have not yet done a volunteer orientation and you would like to, or if maybe you know someone who you think would be a great volunteer at City Kids, again, you can direct them to volunteer@citykids.ca, or even on our website, citykids.ca, there is a button for becoming a volunteer that people could fill out, and that would start the process. In terms of scheduling from this point on, we have been taking a bit of a slower approach with getting volunteers connected in the community, just as we worked out internally what our own COVID policies and procedures were going to be to make sure that we could keep everyone safe. But now we feel like we have a good foundation of that. And so you should be hearing from the staff member who is kind of your volunteer coordinator. If you haven't already, you should be hearing from them in the next week or so, just making you aware of what the opportunities are so that you could say, yes, that's something that I think I could join in on. In terms of a full schedule of when everything is happening, for the fall months, that's something that we're looking to have available, I'd say within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're hoping that we'd be able to say, here's all of the different days that we're going to be in the community, visiting which routes. I know that many of you who are watching this as volunteers have specifically relationships with the kids on that, so it makes sense that you would want to be joining in on those routes. But at any point, if you've got questions as a volunteer about how you could connect, again, just reach out to us in any way, and we'd be happy to answer your questions and get you connected in a really meaningful way back in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've been looking for things to do and looking to re-engage, the doors are open here now. We're looking for support. So I encourage you for sure, Laura, that go to the website's the easiest and best way to be able to do that. And Laura, just before we go to, I think we have time for at least one more question if we have one. Just before I go to that, I do want to mention that we're here today. Laura and I aren't wearing masks. We're separated. I know on your screen it looks like we're side by side. We are separated much more than 6 feet. We have some of our staff and technical crew that's here today helping with this, the production and the video cast. They're all wearing their masks, and we've taken a lot of extreme precautions to make sure that both our staff are safe, our volunteers are safe, and equally, and if not more importantly, of course, our kids and our families. So any volunteers, to get involved, we would take you through all of our procedures and all of our policies to make sure that everybody, obviously safety is the most important and paramount thing that we're looking after right now. Laura, do we have time for one more question before we wrap up today?
We do. One that is shared, and that is, if a donation is made online through Canada Helps, is City Kids charged an administration fee?
Normally, I would ask Jessica, who looks after that, who's not on camera today, what that is. There is an administrative fee, I believe, that comes off that. It's fairly small, I believe. I think my direction, my encouragement would be, if somebody can get to the City Kids website, I would encourage to go and make a direct deposit right through the City Kids website through our own pieces. That way, that would save some money on that. Now, there is always a small administrative fee that comes there through there, but we wouldn't. I believe it's a better way to do it than just working with Canada Health. I will say, we will appreciate whatever anybody does to give and support financially, and you certainly can give through Canada Helps.
That's great. We have a few more questions on here, Todd, and so just want to make a commitment that if we haven't had a chance to answer your question live, we will be responding to it still. Your questions are important, and we want to be able to continue the dialogue with you as we move forward.
Absolutely. Well, just as we close off here today, again, thank you so much to all of our volunteers, to all of our supporters, for those of you that are tuning in today. Thank you for expressing your love and care to City Kids. We know that in this day and age, there's so much that's challenging each of us right now. And that taking time today out of your own challenges, out of your own things that you're doing, and even the fact that you've probably been on, video conferencing a lot. It says a lot to us that that City Kids is important and that you're standing with us. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate that today. So just remember, as we continue on here, that we are committed to meeting the needs of our family. It's our values of faith, hope, and love that continue to demand a response, demand that we go out and get up every day to do all that we can do to bring that faith, hope, and love to the children in our families. And we're committed to doing that. As we go on from here, I would encourage you, tell people about what City Kids is doing. We want to get our message out that while there's great needs right now, there are hopeful things that are happening. And I'm hoping that you got as much joy out of watching that video as we did, to know that children, parents, families, as much as there's challenges right now and suffering, hope is alive, and City Kids is able to bring that hope to thousands of kids over the course of the weeks and months. Thank you again for joining us, and as we close off, just God bless to each of you. May you stay safe, may you stay well, and we look forward to seeing you guys soon.